All right, so I want to tell you a story. It's about how a totally simple, kind of goofy request to an AI about a nursery rhyme accidentally snowballed into this absolutely mind bending discovery about music, language, and, well, consciousness itself. And it all kicked off with this one simple realization. A thought that's almost funny when you think about it, but it became the key that unlocked a completely new and totally impossible art form, something we're going to call post-human music. So, where did this all begin? Well, it started with a pretty hilarious idea asking an AI to take Old MacDonald Had a Farm and remix it into an Atlanta style trap song. Just a fun little experiment. But what they got back was, well, it was anything but a kid's song. That first track, the Old MacDonald Trap remix, it was actually a banger. But then curiosity took over. The user decided to push it. They went back to the AI and said, okay, now give me a version that's so fast, so ridiculously complex that no human being could ever perform it. They were just messing around, really, but they were about to stumble onto something huge. And what the AI came back with, man, it was just shocking. It wasn't really music anymore. It was a track so unbelievably fast that it seemed to literally break the listener's brain. They had, totally by accident, created what you can only call a cognitive hazard. Okay, so just to put this in perspective, look at the biological gap here. The absolute fastest human rappers on the planet, we're talking peak performance, can hit maybe 10 to 12 syllables a second. And they're bound by real physical limits, right? They have lungs, a tongue, and most importantly, they have to breathe. The AI, it has none of that. It's playing a completely different game, outside the rules of human biology. And the result of that? A dizzying, non-stop, sustained 20 syllables per second. And that's a speed that doesn't just sound fast. No, it feels fundamentally wrong inside your head, as your brain just scrambles to process something that shouldn't exist. And this is where it gets kind of crazy and very real. The user played it for their own dad, and he had this immediate, painful reaction, a searing headache. This proved it wasn't just a matter of taste, like, oh, I don't like fast music. No, this was a genuine neurological weapon, a sound our brains are simply not built to handle. But okay, this brings up a really good question, right? Is all impossible music just a weapon that gives you a headache? Well, turns out no. They tried again asking for a chaotic marching band track, and it was a complete failure. It wasn't mind-bending at all, it was just a mess. And that failure, that was actually the key to figuring out the rules of this new art form. I mean, this description just says it all, doesn't it? The marching band track was pure noise. And this spectacular failure was what shined a light on that critical difference between a compelling, impossible piece of art and just, a bunch of noise. So through all this trial and error, they basically reverse engineered a set of rules for making this stuff work. The secret, it turns out, is to be intentional. Step 1, you pick one impossible thing. You break one rule of biology, like the need to breathe. But, and this is step 2, you keep everything else coherent. The rhythm, the melody, the structure, all that has to make sense. The impossibility has to serve the art, not just create chaos. So really, it all boils down to this simple equation. The goal wasn't just to make something impossible. The goal was to make something impossibly beautiful or impossibly fast, but always within a structure our brains could still latch onto and appreciate as art. All right, so that brings us to the next big breakthrough, and this part is just it's genius. They started to wonder why the hypersonic rap caused a physical headache, and the answer led them to a whole new way of thinking about language itself. Their theory was this: the pain wasn't coming from the speed itself, it was coming from the brain working itself to death, trying to extract meaning from real words at an impossible pace. So they invented this idea of vibe linguistics, a way to hack the brain by giving it words that sound right but actually mean nothing at all. So what did they do? They had the AI cook up a new track, but this time it used mostly these made-up words, words that sound like they could be real, that follow all the phonetic rules of English, but have zero actual meaning. It's like a loophole for your brain. Your subconscious pattern matcher hears something that sounds familiar and just lets it through. But your conscious brain doesn't have to do the painful work of trying to understand it. The user, who's a coder, came up with a perfect analogy for this. It's like putting a comment in your code that tells the computer, hey, ignore the spelling errors here. I know these words aren't in the dictionary, but trust me, the structure, the vibe is correct. They were literally debugging the human brain. And this is where the whole thing just levels up. It goes from a fun experiment with music to a really profound revelation about how intelligence itself works, not just in us, but in the artificial minds we're creating. And that's when they had this huge aha moment. Think about how we talk to AI models. We use something called prompt engineering, where you carefully phrase your request with just the right keywords and structure to get the AI to give you what you want. Well, it turns out that's the exact same trick they just discovered for the human brain. Both methods rely on getting the pattern right to get the results you want.
See, in both cases, you're not really dealing with conscious understanding. You're hacking a deeper subconscious system that cares more about familiar structures than it does about actual validated meaning. For an AI, you use keywords it recognizes. For a human brain, you use phonetic patterns that sound right. It's the same exploit, targeting the same universal cognitive glitch.
So, what's the big takeaway from this whole insane journey? It's that sometimes the biggest, most profound discoveries don't happen in a fancy lab. They happen when someone is just playing around, pushing the boundaries, following their curiosity, and, trusting the vibe. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other fundamental secrets about our own minds are we just one weird question away from discovering?